children and grandchildren and progeny. The Jahmiyyah have also children, which we're going to talk about them right now, and grandchildren, who took from their principles, but they disagreed with them. Just like your son does not follow everything you tell him, right? He takes many things from you, but then he deviates a little bit. And then his son takes from him, and then he deviates a little bit. But they're all, in this case, problematic, because the father here is the source of all misguidance. So we're going to look at the progeny of the Jahmiyyah as well, one by one. That's why we start by mentioning them. Even though people will agree that they're misguided, but they will have progeny. So the next children of the Jahmiyyah came. They are the Mu'tazila. Mu'tazilite. So we have the Jahmiyyah and then we have the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila are the children of the Jahmiyyah. You know? What the Mu'tazila did, they said, you know what, look, these Jahmiyyah are very bad, man. They deny Allah Azza wa Jall's attributes. We're not going to do that. We affirm that Allah Azza wa Jal has names but no attributes. Sorry, say that again. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Aziz, but He has no Izzah. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Qawi, the most powerful, but He has no power. The most wise, but He has no wisdom. Was it like, do you understand language? Do you speak? Are you okay? He will say to you, yes. The reason we do that is because when we debated with the philosophers, same issue. They told us that more than one attribute means more than one God. Say what? Sorry? Say yes. Because each of these attributes is eternal, and therefore you have more than one eternal, and therefore you have more than one God. We say, but are you separating the attributes from the individual? If I say, speak to any of you sitting down here, and I say, your speech is another person, and your hearing is another person, and if you're old, he's old, and if he's young, where is this intellect? Where are you bringing this intellect from? But believe it or not, that was their principles. That's why, just because of this stupid argument, they've ended up denying Allah's attributes, affirming His name and denying His attributes. Then they ended up also bringing principles of misguidance. But I'll tell you something very important. The people of falsehood always do this. They name misguidance with beautiful names. What do? They name misguidance with beautiful names. Because if they tell you a bad name, no one is going to be interested. So they tell you we have 5 main principles. The Mu'tazila, 5 usul, 5 main principles. The first one is what? Listen to this beautiful name, Tawheed. Allahu Akbar, MashaAllah. First principle of the Mu'tazila is Tawheed. And what they mean by Tawheed is what we said. To deny Allah Azza wa Jalla's attributes. Because they say many attributes means many gods, so we'll make it one now. Take all of the attributes, and we say just one Allah. So it's Tawheed, you see? We're doing Tawheed. So they call it Tawheed. So they beautify it with a beautiful name to misguide the people. And trust me, this is a principle you'll always see the people using. You'll see people of misguidance, many of which whom we're about to talk about today, they will use the name Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. They will tell you, we are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Because they cannot tell you something else that you might not like to hear, If you tell them a name you never heard before, they will be like, no, so they will tell you Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Or we follow the righteous predecessors. They will tell you these things. But when you start listening to them, do they quote the hadith, the sunnah? No. Do they quote the companions, the tabi'een? Did they quote the Quran? No. He'll tell you my intellect. Our teacher, this person said, that person said. They're not going to tell you the Quran and the sunnah. So be careful of that. So the Mu'tazila had, we said, 5 principles, right? The first was what they called Tawheed. The second principle they had was called Adl, justice, MashaAllah. What do they mean by justice? What do they mean by justice? Who can tell us what they mean by justice? Who knows? Does anyone know? Yes?
They deny that Allah is the creator of the actions of the slave. They deny qadar, basically.
Yes, so they deny qadar. They deny the qadar. Because they say it's not just if Allah knows or Allah wills and we're punished. We believe Allah wills and we also have a will. But they say, no, it's not just. It's not just. Right? So we have justice. And then they have another principle, third principle. That principle they will call one state between 2 states. Manzila bayn al-manzilatayn. And what they mean by that is a person who commits a major sin. Person who commits a major sin is neither a believer nor a disbeliever. Say, sorry, so it's either you're a believer or a disbeliever. Why you bringing another thing into the picture? They will say to you, there's something in between. And this is coming from Wasil ibn Ata and Amr ibn Ubaid, which are the heads of Al-Mu'tazila. They were sitting down in the sitting of Al-Hasan al-Basri, who was from the righteous predecessors. And then they said to Al-Hasan al-Basri, what do you say about the person who commits a major sin? What do you say about Murtakib al-Kabira? He said, Murtakib al-Kabira is not a disbeliever. He said to him, I see he's not a believer, he's not a disbeliever. He's in a state between. And then he left the majlis, the sitting of Al-Hasan al-Basri. Then Al-Hasan al-Basri said, اعتزلنا واصل. Wasil, he left us. And that's why where the term Mu'tazila comes from. Right? The name Mu'tazila comes from this idea. Right? And then they had these principles, these 5 principles. They said Infadul Wa'id. What do they mean by Infadul Wa'id? Like applying the punishment that Allah Azza wa Jal said He's going to apply. And what they mean by that is, who knows? Does anyone know what Infadul Wa'id means? Applying the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal? Is that the people who commit sins, they're going to be in the fire forever. Believers, you're going to be in the fire forever. Takhlidul Usaf al-Nar. That's what they mean by applying Allah's punishment, you know? So if you're a believer, you're not going to, as a Muslim, you're not going to leave the fire, you're going to remain in the fire for good. And they will say that is infadul wa'id, applying Allah's punishment. Allah Azza wa Jal said this punishment and we're applying His punishment. So they use these names and they try to change and manipulate and play games in order for them to deceive and confuse the masses and confuse the people. So it's very important to know this. They have these fundamental principles that they use to misguide the masses, to misguide the people. Now, this is, as we said, are the children of what? What is the first name that we said? Let's see if someone remembers. Jahmiyyah. So the Mu'tazila are the children of the Jahmiyyah. And